Jerome, if you can hear me, you're not on mute.
Say what? What did you hear? Oh, good, good. Yeah, I got the
Hey, Dr. Bond.
Hi there, Christy. I just want to make sure you guys can hear me and see me okay.
Yep, looking
Okay,
great. I can hear you, no problem.
perfect.
Jerome is not on yet. In fact, oh no, we're just 1 minute till, so I'll just go ahead and get myself organized here. Got
Sounds
some
good.
strange lighting. There we go. That's less offensive. We've got a bunch of hands up. Hi, everybody. If you have your hands up to check in, you don't necessarily need it. And you only need your hand, you don't need to check in. So the hands up, you can put your hands back down unless you're just raising your hand because you have something to say, but I'll tell you what you need to do to get your attendance receipts in just a second. You don't have to check in with your hands. So some of you may have your hands up by accident. So you're just playing with the buttons and that's okay. And we've still got people rolling in. Hi, Jerome.
Hey, how are you? Hi, Dr. Bond. How are you?
Hi there, Jerome. I'm doing great. So thanks
Good.
again for having me. I'm happy to be here to see you guys again.
We're delighted. Thank you. And if you're half as intriguing as last time, people will be going bonkers. That learning how to sleep better, I think, is a high interest.
Yeah, it is. And there's just so many things that are challenging that right now, or at least there have been, at least over the past year plus. So
Yep, lots of stressors out there.
Yeah.
Jerome, I was not able to share screen. You jumped on before me, so you've got control. Do you, I can do everything else, but can you just give me permission to share my screen really quick? I want to put up that opening screen so people can see.
Nicely.
If you don't mind, please.
If you ask nicely. How do I do that?
So if you go down to screen share, you have a little side arrow, and then click on that little side arrow, and then you can give the other panelists permission.
Panelists. There we go. How's that?
That probably will do the trick. There we go. So everybody, I'm just going to put this up for just 1 second because I want to see all those, I want all those people out there who needed to see how to get permission for attendance receipts. If you look up here in the top right corner, it says attendance receipts. If you are pre-op, you can request an attendance receipt by emailing supportgroup@unjury.com. Please provide your name, date, email, and phone number. So I just wanted to get that up there just for a second before we get started, since we didn't have that up to start. So hopefully everybody's getting a chance to look there.
Maybe move your mic down ever so slightly, Christy.
Yes.
Picking up your breath. There we go.
Okay.
Glad you're
I have my mug with me today.
Look
So
at that.
I always
great.
Yeah, those are precious.
High demand, yeah.
We're gonna have to do another order or something, I think.
Yeah.
They're nice mugs. I like it.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, hopefully everybody got that little bit of information that they needed. Jerome disappeared on us, so we'll give him just 1 second to pop back on. And then I'll start giving everybody some information about how this whole thing works. So needed this Zoom today. Good. I love my mug. I'm glad some people got mugs. Jerome maybe went to get his mug too. We can all be, I don't have mine today, but.
I swallowed something wrong, so I'll be
right. Sorry. I hope you're okay. I thought you went to find your own UNJURY mug. Well, I'll start talking. We are recording and we are past the 7 o'clock marker. So I'll start doing a little bit of our opening checklist to make sure that everybody knows how the meeting works and what to expect. We always like to say a welcome to all of our returning members. We love to see, oh, hey, Kristen, haven't seen you in a while. So we like to see all those names that we recognize, but we also love to see the new people who pop on every week and are experiencing this for the first time. So welcome to everybody. And just as an FYI of how you can communicate with us. So just in case you're wondering, all you should see on your screen is the 3 panelists. We can't see you. We can't even, we can't tell that you're here or not, aside from if you raise your hand or if you kind of speak through the chat. So to communicate with us, probably one of the best ways just to say hi or make comments is to use that chat function that you see. You can also use the Q&A feature down below. You'll see a little Q&A. That's a good place to put your questions. We always try to get to as many of them as we can, but it's tough because we have such great information coming from our panelists. So we'll do our best to take questions. Another way that you can ask a question is by raising your hand and waiting and hoping that we get to call on you. Sometimes the lineup for the hands gets pretty lengthy, and we do our best. But what I will tell you is that if you do raise your hand to ask a question, your name is going to come across the screen. We can't do anything about that. So just know that we are recording. If you raise your hand to ask a question, your name will be shown. Otherwise, you can sit back, relax, and just listen if that's what you want to do and be completely anonymous. We do ask that if you ask a question or make a comment, that please, keep it positive, keep it uplifting, be really supportive of your other members. We leave judgment completely out the door and just know that everybody is on their own journey here and doing it their own way, whatever works for them. And we're going to be supportive of that. So we hope that you all feel better when you leave this meeting than you did when you arrived. So that's the main stuff. The other thing is that if you stay on the call to the end, you have a chance to win an UNJURY raffle basket prize. So we have names chosen based on the registrations. And if you're still here at the end of the meeting, we call a name, you raise your hand, and you win a prize. So hang in there, everybody. Let's go through some introductions. I think here's the other one, since a couple of people have popped on since I showed the first screen. If you're here and you need credit for your clinic, you need some sort of attendance receipt saying that you logged on, you can email us at supportgroup@unjury.com. And Jerome is putting that in the chat right now, supportgroup@unjury.com. That will allow you to request your attendance receipt. They don't go out automatically. We send a follow-up email, but that's not the attendance receipt. So please reach out to us if you need that. Give us your name, your email address, your phone number, and the date that you attended. It's really important that you give us the date. We can't just search randomly. So that's how you'll get it. And we'll repeat that later in the meeting. But for now, I think we're going to move on to introductions. As usual, the name or the face that you recognize there is my counterpart on these meetings, Jerome Krashenfels. He is the president and co-founder of UNJURY Proteins and a staple on Wednesday nights. Hi, Jerome.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you and good to be here. Thank you for coming, Dr. Baugh. We really appreciate it. Can't wait to hear everything. So I'm going to shut up.
Okay, well then I'll go ahead and get to Dr. Baugh's introduction now that we all know who he is. We are thrilled to have Dr. Baugh back. In fact, well, let me tell you about him and then I'll tell you why we're so excited. But Dr. Baugh is a psychologist down in the Tampa, Florida area, and he specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy for substance use disorders. Specifically insomnia, eating disorders, and trauma, and he has a particularly unique expertise working with clients who are living with chronic medical conditions, and obesity falls into that category. So last time we had Dr. Baugh on the support group meeting, I think it was it summertime, Dr. Baugh, maybe, or late summer,
I think it
something
was
like that?
Yeah, like mid or late summer. I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
Yeah. We asked him to talk about sleep, and we were all glued to the screen and I think Jerome and I may have asked more questions than the audience, actually. He had such great information, and it was really tough to ask you back, Dr. Baugh, and not ask you to talk about sleep again. But we know that you have other important things to say, and so we wanted to ask you to talk about another important topic tonight, which is changing how you feel by changing how you think. And we will get to that in just a second, but welcome, first of all.
Thank you, it's great to be here. I'm excited.
Good. And if everybody who has been here before, or you can see the welcomes, thank you for coming back in the chat. That's great. But we always start out with a warm-up question that isn't necessarily related to our topic, but we really like to have everybody's input and engagement as we get started so that we know you're all paying attention and excited to be here. And tonight, just we're at the beginning of the year, a lot of people started thinking about some health goals as we talked about them a couple of weeks ago. So my warm-up question is simply, what health goals are you all working on right now? If there's anything special that you picked at the beginning of the year and you want to share it, just go ahead and put it in the chat session. If there's anything specific, like you're trying to drink more water, you're trying to walk more, you're trying to, oh, drink more water. There we go. I got my first one. Cleaner eating, get over COVID. Oh, Barb, we're thinking about you. Hope you're feeling well. More activity, getting off of medications, mindfulness, returning to the basics. That's a good one. We actually have a better habits document that if anybody wants it, go ahead and email me and ask for it. But it's a good just getting back to basics document.
It's
Cutting
coming
down,
fast to read.
cutting down on sugar.
Exercise, walking. Yeah, cutting down on carbs, movement.
90 grams of protein. That one's for you, Jerome.
There we go. Thank you.
Wonderful. Keep them coming. Oh, iron and vitamins. That's great. 30, 30, 30. Love it. Thank you all for sharing. That's always a good way to get started, is to get everybody talking. And I will say, we do love to hear from you. We're going to let Dr. Bond do the majority of the talking tonight because we don't want to miss a word of what he has to say. But whenever there's an opportunity for discussion and you want to speak up, please do. As I said, our topic for tonight is changing the way you feel by changing the way you think. And when I was talking to Dr. Bond, we decided that one of the questions that we might start out with tonight, and this is really a reflection question, not necessarily anything that anyone has to share unless they really want to, but the reflection is about how sometimes the way we think about things is conditioned by our previous experiences. So we want to have you think for a minute about what are some of the major life experiences that you've had that may have left a mark on you. And it could be anything from just a really bad first relationship to, you know, something more serious, but sometimes they're just those things that happen in our lives that really plant a seed. And so as we go forward with Dr. Bond's discussion, it just might be useful to have these things at the forefront of our brains tonight. So a minute to think about that as Dr. Bond gets organized and gets, oh, actually, you did give him permission to, I guess you gave everybody permission to share slides, right, Jerome?
Let's find out.
I think you just generally did it. I think it's just one.
All panelists.
Perfect.
You can start sharing.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
All panelists on both there.
Good. Then that's all we needed to do. All right, everybody. So just kind of keep that question in mind, and we will turn things over to Dr. Bond.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I just want to confirm everyone's able to see me and hear me from that perspective. And I'm going to put some slides up here on the screen. So I want to make sure nothing happens when I do that. But thank you so much, Christy, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you again to both Christy and Jerome for inviting me back. I'm super excited to be here with you guys. And I blocked off the whole time this time. So I know last time I didn't have all of the time available, but we have all the time we need for tonight. So, so I'm excited about that. Let me put this up on the screen and make sure that I do it right. And I'll share that, but then I'm also going to make it full screen. So it should show up full screen. All right. And now everybody should see kind of just like a title page here. But so let me just kind of briefly say, again, I'll do an introduction in just a minute, but number one, I'm just excited to be here with you guys tonight. So I think this is, you know, UNJURY has a great platform here in terms of being able just to connect people from all over the place, which I love these kind of advantages that really have happened in the year of 2020 and, you know, 2021, that in spite of all the crazy, there's still been some really exciting things that have happened. And I think this is really one of them, of being able to really kind of connect with people over large kind of distances. And because of that, we're going to kind of talk a little bit tonight about, you know, really beginning to change the way that you think. based on changing, changing how you're feeling by changing the way that you're thinking. And before we kind of go into much depth with that, or kind of in deeper into that, what I want to kind of just give a caveat to everybody, and I think this might be a little hard, but you can definitely put your questions in the chat box there, is that, usually when I give a presentation, my goal is not for it to be boring in any way. In fact, I think we've all had some boring presentations today, and different kind of experiences that you've been through. But my goal is that really, you learn best by asking questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. And maybe Christy, you can kind of get those to me if they come through, or at a point, whatever, there's a good spot for question taking. But really, honestly, everything about this presentation is really going to be about you and applying it to your life. So that's really kind of one of my take-home messages. The other just important things, just from a reminder perspective, is that this is really just an educational experience. This time here tonight, while I'm enjoying it and loving it, it's not intended to be professional or legal advice in any way. This is really just, an opportunity just for questions and answers about things generally as it relates to people, no individual specific person. But I would encourage you, if you do need to need services, definitely seek out a professional from that perspective too. And there's some contact information there as well. And maybe just kind of introduce myself and who I am. Again, I am Dr. Daniel Baugh. You just call me Dr. Baugh. I am a health psychologist. And so really what that means is that I'm a licensed psychologist, but I focus in on how your mind and your body really interact with each other. And this really shows up a lot with clients that I work with who are living with chronic pain, so they're wanting pain relief, or they're living with sleep problems, or they're living with weight-related kind of issues. And I would say I see a good number of clients who are before weight loss surgery as well as after weight loss surgery, but the majority of my clients are usually after weight loss surgery, and some sort of challenge in life has kind of come up for them. And you can always find me on social media there too. I post a lot of inspirational quotes, which you'll probably see in this presentation. So if you like those things, feel free to find me on those kind of platforms there. Also, this is more about me. So this is myself, this is my partner, Mac, and then my daughter, Reagan, she's 5. We've been doing lots of kind of kayaking this year because there's really not much else to do, except like be outdoors and far away from people for the most part. But she now just started kindergarten actually in the fall there.
Did you change your slide, Dr. Baugh?
Yeah, I think we missed, we're one slide behind you.
Let's see here. Which one are?
We're still seeing you.
Intro slide. Sorry.
Let me see. Oh, hold on. Let's see, did it change that time, or is it still the same one?
Still same.
Same one.
Okay, here, let me try going. Let me escape that one and try. Did it change this time?
No.
Here, I'm gonna stop the screen share and restart it. We'll see if that fixes it, because sometimes I know it can kind of get stuck there. Thanks for telling me though. Like that, this is why I always love these technology glitches, because you never know what happens.
It's all about remaining cool while it's all happening though, right? Because I've been on the end of it where I'm in panic mode trying to get, I think the worst one was trying to get a video started. And I was sharing all kinds of screens that I shouldn't have been sharing, but.
I know, it's always challenging, right? Okay, let's see, did it advance this time?
It says it's just started screen sharing, but now we just have a black screen.
Oh, okay, here, let me stop it again, and let me exit that and try it this way. Share the screen. We'll share this PowerPoint. And it says that I am sharing a screen, but do you see anything on your end?
It says you're viewing Dr. Bond's screen, but let's see, zoom ratio, hide video panel, request remote control.
Oh, it just says you've started. So it doesn't seem like you've either selected the the thing you want to share.
Let me try this. Let me see if it goes. Did it share this time?
No. Oh, it says don't use, somebody said don't use presenter mode.
Ah, okay, that's what I'm in. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so I wonder if this is like a known glitch then with the Zoom update. go out and put one back up. Okay, here, let me try that. Let's quit the screen share. Okay, I'm gonna try it again.
Okay. Worst case scenario,
And-
you can always email the presentation to me and I
Okay.
could try it on my end too.
All right, let's see. Do you see anything? It says I am now sharing a screen.
We do not see anything.
Let's see. Let me switch to this desktop and share it that
Ah,
way.
there we go.
Okay. Does that work? Or do you see anything now?
We do. We do.
That's,
Okay.
That's very, that works fine. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see the
Okay.
little thumbnails on the left too, but that's fine.
Perfect.
Let me see. I'm going to see if I can make it go full screen. And do you see it full screen now, or did it?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Now.
Good. Now we see the kayaking. Now we're with you on the kayaking.
Yes. Thank you everyone for kind of bearing with me for our technical difficulties. And what I just want to make sure is that do you see the next screen now too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yay. Okay. Good. Okay. Who would have known? Who would have thought our technology? This is just really the reasons why I'm interested in health psychology. It really was that I was an overweight kid. Also dealt with depression a lot earlier in my life, and it's a combination of those things plus shame about my body and then my identity. It really just created this cycle that's incredibly draining. And so really health psychology for me was a way of kind of understanding those things. And that's why I'm kind of interested in what I do and why I kind of do it, because there's a definite connection between your mind and your body. So really how healthy your mind is really going to have a big impact on how healthy your body can be in the long run from that perspective. And so that's really what I want to talk about today. So today we're going to just kind of talk a little bit about changing the way that you think. And I want to introduce this idea of kind of self-compassion as well, because it's going to be really relevant. We're going to do a little exercise in just a few moments. In addition to that, we're going to talk about, what we think about success. Also really what we think about failure too, because they're very connected. And then really beginning to understand there's really 5 aspects of every problem, and then how you apply that to yourself. And then the very last there is I have a self-help kind of recommendation, a book that I give recommend almost every one of my clients actually, just because there's even more in there that I think can kind of be helpful for people. So that's just kind of a little roadmap of where we're going to kind of go for tonight. And this next kind of slide up here, I'm not sure if anyone can kind of really see it or what it's really kind of getting at, but I'll just kind of explain it quickly, is that really it's called the forgetting curve. And what this really means is that as human beings, the majority of the stuff that we learn, we forget about relatively quickly. In fact, if within an hour after this presentation, if you haven't really applied anything that you learned here tonight, you're going to retain about 58% of it, but then it drops to 44% at an hour. And then within like a day, you really only retain about 34% of something new. And really what that means is that everything we're going to talk about tonight, you really just want to think about, how does it work in my life? Like, how do I apply it to my life? Because that's ultimately what we want what my goal, at least for you, is that you take something from this and think about how it looks for you. And so this first thing that I want to introduce to you guys tonight is really what is mindful kind of self-compassion. And the reason why mindful self-compassion is so important, and I want to kind of pose a question, even though I know it might be challenging to have people type in a response, but let me ask you this. When you're a really tiny, baby, and you don't even have formed language yet, all you have is, you can cry, you can kind of move yourself a little bit, how does a parent calm a child when they're that young? Anybody have any guesses or thoughts? And I'll check and see the chat box there too, if I can see it.
There we go. Holding, changing diaper, feeding, touching, rocking a bottle, food, swaddling, picking up, singing, pacifier. Yeah, lots of good answers there.
Yes, excellent, good. And what I love that you guys are seeing is that, when you're a super young child and you don't even have formed language yet, you can't speak to your child and say, oh, just calm down, things will be okay. Just kind of, quiet yourself down. Like, you have to communicate in ways that don't involve verbal kind of communication. And that's things like, speaking in a soft kind of reassuring tone, using physical touch, like, like cradling, and usually being kind of very gentle with your movements. And really just kind of being very supportive and kind in a way that you can feel without necessarily needing to understand kind of verbal and kind of receptive language. Why that matters is because as human beings, you still have that same nervous system inside you that you had when you were a little kid and you didn't even have words to speak yet. And that same, nervous system is what gets so elevated as we go throughout our lives and as we go throughout our days. Meaning that you experience work stress, you experience, relationship stress, you get a million notifications on your phone that kind of beeps and dings and buzzes in your pocket. And what's really important about, self-compassion is it's a way of learning how to be with yourself and to calm yourself when things around you get really stressed out or stressful. And that's going to be so important, especially as it relates to changing the way that we talk to ourselves. Because I don't know about you, but I know for my own kind of experience, there was a time in my life, and I would say it still shows up occasionally, where the voice that's inside my mind, like I would not be friends with that person. Like I would in no way want to be like, "Ooh, yeah, like count me in for like hanging out with the voice that's in my mind." Like, usually it's kind of this like very kind of self-critical type of thing. At times it can be really demanding. It can say, gosh, wow, well, you should have done, you did that okay, but you should have done better or should have done something else. And, I know not everybody has, an internal kind of dialogue like that. But the reason why self-compassion is so helpful is because you can really learn a way to respond to yourself, especially when this kind of critical voices show up. And that's really where this kind of self-compassion piece kind of comes in. And the nice thing about it is that through practice, you can really learn how to just be able to turn to yourself and just acknowledge when you're suffering, acknowledge when you're having a rough moment, and that you're learning to just be with those frustrations instead of reacting to those frustrations. And that difference, while it kind of feels rather elementary, is so crucial when it comes to changing the ways that we talk to ourselves in our own kind of mind. And so really with kind of self-compassion, we're going to do a quick exercise. You're learning to respond to yourself with kindness. And I see Brene Brown, love Brene Brown. My gosh, she's amazing. Especially, and her language is so relevant to here, and I think she uses the phrase, the story that my mind is telling me. And this is so on point with that because it's the same type of thing of what do we tell ourselves internally. And the real reason for that, and you have a couple different pictures up here, but the one that's important, the most important one's on the bottom left there about your heart rate changes, is that we absolutely know physiologically your body changes when you can learn to be more calm and reassuring with yourself. You can just acknowledge a frustration as it is what it is and learning how to respond to it without just kind of amplifying it, because we absolutely know that our mind can just take something and run with it. And this really just allows you to take a more kind of objective approach to some of these things. And so before we kind of, before I spend any more time talking on it, what I want to do is just kind of walk you through an exercise real quick on self-compassion. And so we'll just do this one. It'll be fairly short. So what I want everybody to do is I just want you to get in a position that's kind of comfortable for you, just a comfortable position. You can either keep your eyes open, you can close them. If you keep them open, just kind of pick something on your wall to maybe focus on or to stare at a little bit. And you can also lie down if you wanted to too, although I'm not sure what your situation is right now. So just kind of, just be cautious in wherever you're at. But I want you just to focus in first on your breathing as you just simply breathe air in and then out. And just in and out. And as you just kind of focus in on your breathing, we're not going to change your breathing or do anything along those lines. I just want you to settle into just a natural rate and rhythm of just air coming into your body and then leaving your body. And as you're just kind of settling into that rhythm, I just want you to bring to your mind a person or another living being that just naturally makes you smile in some way. This can be someone that you have an easy and an uncomplicated relationship with. Could be, a cat or a dog or a parent, or it could be a child. I would say whoever it is, I just want you to focus in on someone that just naturally brings happiness to your heart. And if there's many people or many beings that show up, I would just say, just choose one. It's okay. Just choose one that just kind of again, brings that smile to your face there. And I want you just to kind of let yourself to feel what it's like to be in that being's presence right now. Just kind of create an image that's so vivid. It's as if you're right there, right now with them. And I want you just to kind of allow yourself to enjoy the good company of this person. And as you're just kind of enjoying their company, I want you just to kind of recognize that this being wishes to be happy and to be free from suffering, just like you do. And I want you just to kind of listen to these words as I'm about to say them. And I just want you to kind of repeat them maybe silently to yourself. And I would say just maybe listen to them and feel how they ring for you. But here are those words. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And I'll say them again. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And I just want you to kind of savor any warm feelings that might arise for you. And just take your time in this moment right here. This is literally just you visualizing someone or something that just naturally brings a smile to your face. And you're just enjoying their good company right here. And now what I want you to do is I want you to visualize adding yourself to this kind of circle of goodwill and kind of create an image of yourself kind of in the presence of your loved one. Maybe you can visualize you walking into the room and joining your loved one or your pet or whoever you have with you right there. And now I want you just to listen to these words. And again, just kind of listen and notice how they feel for you, like how they ring for you. Like if this feels like something that's true to you. And here's that next kind of these next phrases. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. May we be healthy. May we live with ease. And I'll repeat that again. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. May we be healthy. May we live with ease. And again, I just want you to savor any warm feelings that arise for you in this moment and just kind of take your time to kind of, again, enjoy this experience with you and that loved one for you. Just kind of enjoying each other's presence. And now I want you to kind of let go of that image of the other person, perhaps maybe kind of thanking your loved one before moving on. And then I want you just to let the full focus of your attention just kind of rest directly on you. And I also want you to add in some physical touch now. That could be, taking your hand and just kind of putting it over your heart, or maybe kind of giving yourself a little hug, or just even just putting your hands in your lap together, whatever, type of physical touch feels supportive for you. But I really just want you to feel the warmth and the gentle pressure of your hand, much like how you would support or be kind to, a young child. And I just want you to kind of visualize your entire body in your mind's eye right now. And I really just want you to think about yourself as you hear this phrase, and just kind of, again, think about this for yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And again, I'll say that again. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And I just again want you to savor any warm feelings that might rise up for you. And just take some time here just to dwell on really what you're focusing in on right now. That you're just wishing well wishes to you, to yourself, and that they're coming from you. As you just kind of take a few breaths now and just kind of rest quietly in your own body, just kind of accepting whatever this experience was for you. Some of my clients love this. Others of my clients are like, oh, not this one. This one does not speak to me, and that's okay. But I just want you again just to kind of rest here in this moment. And then whenever you're ready, just kind of join me back here and we'll kind of wrap that up in terms of kind of this loving kindness for a loved one. And let me ask you, what was that experience like for everybody? Any comments in the chat box for people? There can be so many emotional reactions to something like this. Anything from like calming to, you know, I'm very tearful, to I was bored, to I got angry, to all of these types of things. Because you can have so many types of reactions to loving kindness, both for someone else, but then also for ourselves. And the reason why I wanted to do this exercise is because, you know, as human beings, I think it can really be easier sometimes to be kind to someone else, like to be kind to that friend or that family member that you know has just had a rough time. And so we know how to be kind to them. But when we think about being kind to ourselves, it's like we don't even know how to speak to ourselves. We don't even know how to be with ourselves. And this is really where self-compassion comes into play, especially as we think about the rest of what we're going to talk about tonight, which is really going to be beginning to change the way that we think. Because I can absolutely tell you, it is incredibly difficult to change your perspective on life if you're not even kind and supportive to who you are as a person. It can just kind of create a lot of tension and clashing, which that's another piece that we can talk about for maybe another presentation. But this is definitely one of those pieces that's helpful. And so, you know, what's really kind of important is really kind of thinking about how we evaluate what success is. And, you know, this kind of slide here that I have is usually for a lot of my clients who are living life after weight loss surgery, is that really the journey has just begun. And that, you know, there's lots of different things that happen after weight loss surgery. And there can be so much kind of, you know, build up to things that you think that once I just get over that hump of getting done with the surgery, that things will be much easier. And I would say there's definitely some incredible benefits to things that happen as a result of surgery, but that also other things can show up too. And because of that, that's really why we want to think about how we evaluate success. Because so many times, whether we've gone through weight loss surgery or not, is that, you know, success is often on the left-hand side is what people think it is. But on the right-hand side is what it really is. It's this idea that we go up and down and all around. And sometimes we take 3 steps forward and 5 steps backwards to then take 2 steps forward and 6 steps backwards. And then we take 9 steps forward and only 3 steps backwards. And this is the process of what I really want to focus in on tonight, of learning how to respond to when we may have mess ups or when we have mistakes. Because really, we have such a negative way of thinking about failure. And we tend to think that failure is this like defining thing, that if it's there, it just automatically means that we have missed the mark, that we're lesser than, when that's further from the truth. And we're going to talk about why in a little bit. And the reason why, and I have a quote here, the author's on the second page here, but the first mistake is never the one that ruins you. It's the spiral of repeated mistakes that follow. You know, missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. And what's really important is that the problem is not that we're slipping up. The problem is thinking that if you can't do something perfectly, that you shouldn't do it at all. And this is by James Clear. And really what this is really getting at is that there's so much to learn from our quote mistakes that we really just let go down the drain. Because, you know, a good example is, you know, when we fall off a bandwagon in some way, and whether it's, you name it, whatever it's going to be. I don't like the word diet, but I mean, we could say diets. When you fall off the whatever the habit is that you're wanting to do, and you fall off it, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I was a total mess up. When in fact, we totally forget about all these other examples of when we've done something, you know, successfully. And what we're talking about today is how to change that, pattern. Because so often what happens is this kind of negative spiral that happens, you know, again and again and again. And it's almost like, it's like a domino effect that kind of happens in our mind, where once something shows up, and this is where we're going to kind of learn more about it. Once something shows up, it's like it triggers the dominoes. And really, the beginning to understanding those dominoes is understanding that there's really about 5 aspects to every problem. And understanding these 5 aspects and how you apply them to your life will change the way that you see yourself. And we're going to kind of go over it, because I want to be very clear. It's not 5 aspects to making a change, you know, instantly, but it's 5 aspects to beginning to understand how to make that change kind of happen. And so the first part that we want to do is, this is just kind of a picture here, and it can look a little overwhelming for right now. So I just want to say it's okay if it doesn't really make sense, and that's okay because I'm going to explain it. Is that there's really these 5 pieces that we're going to talk more about tonight. And the first one is this giant bubble. It's a giant gray bubble, and it says environment. And inside this environment are 4 other bubbles. There's your thoughts, which is the way that you think. There's your moods, which are what you feel. There's your behaviors, and behaviors are really important because those are the things that you do, as well as the things that you choose not to do. And so really what's important to recognize is the behavior is just as much about choosing to get out of bed and start your day as it is to hit the snooze button and to sleep in your day. And there's lots of other examples of behavior being a choice to do something or choosing not to do something. And then on top of that, then there's your physical reactions. And what's really important about that is hunger is absolutely a physical reaction, but it is by no means the only one. Almost every one of my clients experience changes in their pain level or fatigue, experience changes in their sleep, changes in their hunger or their energy level, as well as different things like your heart rate changing, or you know, maybe you experience some gastrointestinal discomfort sometimes if you're maybe feeling some increased anxiety. There's all sorts of different ways that these things kind of interact. And what's really important, what we're going to talk about tonight, is how they interact with each other, which is why you see all these arrows going everywhere. So I would say, even though this kind of looks a little intimidating, we're going to kind of go over it with a few different examples of what this can look like. And the real kind of piece that I want you to kind of think about as you kind of think about how you're going to apply this to your life is, what does this look like in my life? Like, what does this, these are the 5 aspects. We're going to look at a few examples, but I want you to think through as we go through them, just like what the question was that was earlier of, you know, what's kind of left a stamp on you, what's kind of left a mark on you, is I really want you to begin to think, you know, when Christy kind of mentioned that question at the very beginning, I want you to think about yourself as we look through the examples. So this first person that we're going to look at, and these are all fictional, so by the way, and these are just stock photographs. So, but they kind of help to understand maybe some things. The first person we're going to look at, this is Ben. And the history or the environment for Ben is that his wife, Sylvie, had a recent cancer diagnosis, and also that his friend Louis had just passed away. And so that was kind of the environment. It just kind of sets the stage for what Ben's life was kind of going through. And so physical reactions that Ben was having was that he was feeling tired and having some trouble sleeping. Moods that he was feeling is he was more irritable and sad. Some of the behaviors that Ben was experiencing was that he kind of stopped regularly socializing with his friends. He made some extra trips to the hospital to be with his wife Sylvie for her cancer treatment. And really the thoughts that were going through, you know, Ben's mind were in quotes here, which is, you know, everyone I care about is dying. My children and grandchildren no longer need me. It's hopeless. Then each of these things will just kind of get worse and worse until I die. And what's really kind of important is that this is, again, it's just 5 different pieces of the puzzle for Ben. So again, this is Ben. These are kind of 5 pieces of that. And I want you to think about this as it relates to you too. It's not that Ben's story is going to be identical to yours, but that these 5 pieces, what do those look like in your life? And so next, let's look at kind of Marissa. Again, a little bit of a different story. And again, this is all fictitious here. But you know, Marissa, past history, she's been kind of sexually molested by her father. She's had 2 alcoholic and abusive husbands. She's a single parent of 2 teenagers. And the situation that really was the tipping point for her, or that caused more stress in her life, was that she really had negative feedback from a work supervisor. And the physical reactions that she was experiencing was that she was really tired most of the time. Moods that Marissa was going through was that she was feeling pretty depressed. And the behaviors is that she was having some difficulty focusing at work. She was also kind of withdrawing, maybe kind of pulling back from people. She noticed increased crying. And also Marissa had attempted to harm herself and to maybe even kind of end her life, which again, these are relatively kind of common things for a lot of people, even though we don't necessarily talk about them all the time. These types of ways of coping with life show up in a lot of different ways. And so some of the thoughts that were kind of going through Marissa's life were, I'm no good, I'm a failure, I'm never going to get better, my life is hopeless, I may as well kill myself. And just to be very clear, I'm not saying that Marissa's, life and situation are yours or nor is Ben's, but just looking at these as just examples of, again, here's an entirely different person, different life situation, but here are those same 5 aspects. Again, the environment, physical reaction, moods, behaviors, and kind of thinking, if that kind of makes sense. Let's not stop there. Let's also look at maybe Linda, a little bit of a different story here. Linda recently got a job promotion that required her to fly more on some airplanes. She also recently had lost her father, and some physical reactions that she was experiencing was that she was having some cold sweats, a pounding heart rate, having some difficulty kind of breathing. Some of the moods that Linda was going through, she was feeling a lot of fear and panic. And some of the behaviors that Linda was starting to notice is that she was starting to avoid flying. And in fact, she was even thinking that she wanted to kind of relinquish kind of her job promotion. And what's really kind of important to kind of notice here is that some of the thoughts going through Linda's mind is that, I'm having a heart attack and something bad will happen to me if I fly. Again, entirely different situation. So Linda's experiencing some anxiety. And again, very different situation, but same 5 aspects. Again, the environment, physical reactions or physical pieces, moods, behaviors, thoughts. So again, and let's look at one other person, just because again, I want to give you some examples before we kind of take a deeper dive into how this looks like for yourself. Is this next one here is Vic. And again, this is a fictitious kind of, description here, but based off of some examples that are very realistic, actually. Vic had 3 years of sobriety, some lifelong pressure by himself as well as by his parents to really kind of be the best. And physical reactions that Vic was experiencing was some sleep difficulties as well as some stomach problems. So Vic really was experiencing a lot of GI issues, things like maybe some nausea, maybe some diarrhea at times. Moods that Vic was kind of experiencing was feeling really nervous, feeling kind of frustrated. And behaviors that Vic was kind of doing, again, behaviors are the things that we choose to do as well as we choose not to do, is Vic was having some difficulty resisting the urge to drink. He was sometimes avoiding some of the AA meetings he would go to because Vic found AA helpful. And then he was trying to do everything perfectly. And again, some of the thoughts that kind of were going through Vic's mind were, I'm no good, I'm worthless, I'm a failure, I'll be fired, I'm inadequate, something awful will happen to me. If I make a mistake, I'm no good. And again, just to kind of to recap for each one of these people, it's not that Ben's problems or Marissa's problems or Linda's problems or Vic's problems are identical to yours, but that we're using this as an example to really begin to think about what do each one of these areas look like for you, kind of in your life. And let me ask you, why do you think it would be helpful to know what these 5 pieces look like in your own personal life? Like who can type in an example, in the chat box here? Why do you think these 5 pieces would be helpful to know for your own life? Any thoughts? And yes, I see a lot of different comments. I'll have to scroll up and read some of them later. I don't think I've caught all of them, but you're right. There's lots of different pieces kind of showing up here. Yep.
You can't resolve a problem until you understand it. That's a good one. Here we go. Identifying the voices. Oh, they're coming fast. You can't deal with what you're not aware of. That's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that I would add to this is that we might feel and think a lot of these things and not actually put them all together, right?
You got it.
We might not connect the dots.
Exactly. And we often, what's really, I think, really challenging in life is that these things happen in literally like tenths of a second. Like it's kind of like lightning sometimes, that you can have a physical reaction that leads straight to a mood, that leads straight to a behavior, and you're not even sure if you thought anything. Or you can have a thought that just like flashes across your mind, and it can lead straight to a behavior. And this has everything to do with your brain, and what your brain is really just kind of hardwired to do, which, and this is, I would say, if there's one take-home thing that you can take from tonight, is that your brain is hardwired to make decisions quickly, not necessarily accurately, if that makes sense. So your brain will always prioritize speed over accuracy. Now we have a frontal lobe. We have the part of our brain that you and I are using right now for communication, language, and those things. We have these other parts of our brain that allow us to do more, focused kind of work. But and I see fight or flight there. Absolutely right, 100% on that. What's really important to really remember is that by default, most of our life that we're going through, your brain is processing tons of information all the time. And so your brain is always concerned about making a quick decision about something rather than necessarily making an accurate decision. And why do you think that might be? Why do you think our brains do that?
Survival?
Bingo, you got it. Absolutely, it has everything to do with survival. And really, when it comes to survival, speed usually matters more than accuracy. And so that's really what shows up a lot when we talk about negative kind of thinking patterns. Lizard brain, 100%. Yep, totally. Is that these are definitely the kind of the things that are showing up. And the reason why we want to do these 4 aspects, or the 5 aspects tonight, is because I really want you to begin to think about, how does this apply for you? Like, what does your own kind of lizard brain, so to speak, kind of tell yourselves? And I can guarantee you it has everything to do with, these can be things in your life about relationship issues. These can be things in your life about your food and the way that you respond to food and hunger. These can be things, the way that you respond to, conflict at work. These can be things that you respond to, you name it, any part of your life. These same things are going to show up. And so what's really kind of important is that this was like 4 different people with 4 different situations, but it was really the same 5 aspects that kind of showed up across each one of them. And the reason why that's important is because I really want you to begin to think about yourself. And what are kind of some of the significant things that have impacted you? So what I want you to do right now is just kind of get, bust out a note if you have a piece of paper, or you could do like a note on your screen or something along those lines. I just want you to go through a few pieces real quick, and I just want you to jot down your quick thoughts here. So we're going to start with environment. So what do you think is something that, or some things that have been significant for you that have impacted you from your environment? And that could be anything from birth all the way up to something that happened to you today. It doesn't matter when it happened. What matters is that it was significant for you. So, a lot of clients that I work with, food is a big one, right? Especially if you've been through these cycles of kind of dieting before, or cycles of, gaining weight, losing weight. But it's not just food, it's usually other stuff too. Could be, relationship stressors, could be, where you feel like you got hurt in some way, usually meaning hurt like someone broke your trust or kind of broke your confidence in some way. All of these are significant pieces. And I want to be very clear, it's not that your environment's going to predict your future, but your environment is absolutely going to shape the way that you look at things in your present moment. And so that's why it's important just to be aware of some of these things. Another one, the next one, physical reactions. What do you feel in your body? So, different ways of physical reactions for you could be things like, pain that you experience somewhere that maybe gets worse, could be, sleep changes, could be changes in your appetite. It could be changes in your hunger. It could be anything related to your body. I would say stress is a big one though, when it comes to physiologically how you're responding to stuff. So just kind of think through that, because there's lots of different ways. Headaches are another common one that I see. Next after that are, what moods do you frequently experience? And I would say these are moods that are maybe the not so helpful moods. We can always have moods like, I'm happy, or I'm feeling confident today, I'm going to take on today, I'm going to, be an amazing rock star. But those usually aren't the moods that really get us stuck. The moods that get us stuck are, where I'm like, gosh, like, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I'm pretty bored. Or maybe, I don't feel like getting out of bed today. Or maybe it's, gosh, I messed up. Like I gained the number on the scale went up. You name it. Like all of these things can kind of be very kind of powerful from that perspective. And the next part is really behavior. And behavior, again, I just want you to think about how you respond to some of this stuff. And these can be things like, do you reach out to talk to friends, or do you maybe just kind of pull back? Do you maybe watch more Netflix, or do you go to work, or do you call out sick from work? You name it. There can be all sorts of different varieties of what human behavior can look like. And then last, what are some of the thoughts that show up for you and some of these problem areas in your life? what do these kind of ways that you talk to yourself, we did the self-compassion exercise in the beginning today. What is that inner voice kind of really telling you, especially if you feel like you're maybe struggling with something in some way? This is really where we kind of want to think about kind of thinking. What are some, we don't have to share too much of a detail, but maybe what are some examples that I've seen a few of environment that have scrolled by. One of them was, maybe some past kind of traumatic experiences. Anything else that people want to share? What about your food history, especially what food was like in your family growing up? Anybody ever thought about that? And these can be things from like, family of origin, like, your just immediate family, also to broader things, culturally. There are definitely different types of dishes and different types of food groups that show up more in different kind of cultural groups. I would say, yep, food equals comfort, safety, and survival. Excellent. Food is love. Yep, you got it. If you feed me, you love me. Exactly. Or that food was never available. I also have several clients who it's been an interesting experience to kind of work with the change in your access to food can change the way you think about food. And what I mean by that is that going through life when you've had very little food can then change the way that you approach food later in life, to where sometimes you feel like, whoa, I'm not sure when my next meal is going to come, or I'm not sure what that meal is going to look like. And then that really has a long-term effect on you as you kind of move forward. So, yep, I see lots of options there. So yes, you're exactly right. There's so many things that really kind of influence how much, we kind of approach our environment. And then what's really kind of important is you think about what was your physical reaction to these things. I see some binge eating on here. I see some emotional eating. Again, and I want to be very clear, the way that we respond to these things are 100% human. There is, nothing wrong with you for responding to things this way. The challenge is that those ways of responding just aren't really working for you. And that's really where it kind of, that's where we kind of, spin our wheels in the mud, so to speak. But the way that we respond to food has been the challenge, if that kind of makes sense. And so because of that, this is really what we're kind of working on, is that understanding you is learning how to create. And I agree, being Hispanic is all about starch. Yep, there's definitely different pieces within kind of different Latino subgroups of that as well. But really, one of the pieces of why this 5 aspects is so important is that you're learning psychological flexibility in your life. You're learning to control what you can and to learn how to accept the things that you can't. Because really, we're wanting to begin to think about life in 2 different buckets: the things you got control over and the things you have no control over. And I would say 2020 was a perfect example of, there was so much stuff out of our control in 2020, and probably even in 2021, right? Is that there's been so many things outside of our direct control. And yet there are still things that are in our control. And how we respond to the things in each one of those buckets, it's different strategies for each one of those buckets. And so that's what I want to kind of talk about as it relates to these examples of, controlling what you can. Things that you can control are the ways that you drive to work, or you can control what you put in your shopping cart, or you can control, leaving your keys in a gym locker on the way to work. You can control, putting extra portions in a freezer before sitting down for a meal. You can control taking another step on a walk. You can control making a lunch and kind of bringing it to work. That's stuff that you have control over. And again, it's not exhaustive. There's plenty of other things, but those are just kind of some examples. Things that we can't control are things like tiredness or anxiety or low motivation or hunger or cravings or urges to kind of eat a particular food or type of food, or even kind of imagining, how food will taste, or even, this one shows up a lot, thoughts about giving up and being a failure. I would say this shows up too as it relates to food, thoughts about giving up a certain food. Like, what is my life going to look like if I can't have my favorite thing, which maybe it's a pizza and Coke? Like, what is my life going to look like? There's all sorts of these things that kind of show up. And really, thoughts that kind of rationalizing breaking a diet or a physical activity plan. And what's really important about these things, and this is what kind of goes back to that self-compassion that we were talking about in the very beginning. We can't control how these things occur in our lives, but what you absolutely have control over is the way that you respond to them, the way that you respond to tiredness, the way that you respond to anxiety, the way that you respond to hunger and cravings and all of these other pieces. And that's absolutely what we're kind of working on here. The goal is really to find what's called workability, which is really this idea that is what you're doing, is your current strategy, is it really helping you to make your life rich, full, and meaningful? So if the answer is yes, then we say that it's workable. So there's really not much that you need to change. But if the answer is no, then really it's unworkable. And in that case, we really want to think about some alternatives, like some other ways to kind of respond to that. So really want you to keep that in mind of like workability as what I'm doing, is it working to help me to have a life that's rich and full and meaningful, or is it not? Because I think that'll help you to really kind of determine if maybe some of the strategies that you're doing now are helping you to make your life a good one from that perspective. Um, and what's really kind of interesting, and I have a quote up here, is, you know, life isn't about kind of making ourselves into someone else. It's about really coming home to who you truly are. And let me ask you, what do you guys think that means? When you see that quote, what does that mean? What's your best guess? And I don't know who the author is. That's why I have unknown there. Like I've never been able to figure out who that is. So if anyone knows who that is, let me know. But yep, I see that. Be who you're made to be, acceptance, self-love, realizing your potential, accepting who we really are. Mm-hmm. It's really finding yourself and learning how to actually trust your body and trust the way that you interact with yourself. And this is because so much of the cycles that really can kind of derail success, with whether it's with weight loss, or whether it's actually with changing your sleep too, or whether it's with better managing of pain, is that there's so much that can really derail us when it comes down to expectations that maybe we have for ourselves, or that other people kind of have for ourselves. And this next quote too is by George Eliot, which I always love. It's never too late to be what you might have been. Meaning that it's never too late to learn how to say, you know what I have been doing was this, and it was working for me for a period of time, for a season, and maybe it worked really well, and that's totally okay. And then the season of life changed, and now something new. I got to try a different way of looking at it. And so that's really what kind of the goal of understanding these 5 pieces are, is that if you can begin to see the connections between how you're thinking can influence what you're feeling, and how what you're feeling can influence what you're doing, and how what you're doing can influence your body, meaning your hunger, your pain, your anxiety level, your heart rate, all these things, and how all those things interact with each other, you can begin to make changes between the connections there. And those breaking kind of those connections is absolutely what's going to help you to make success in the long term, if that kind of makes sense. So just to kind of recap, just to kind of give a quick overview again, you know, there's really 5 aspects to any problem. There's the environment, your kind of life situations. There are the physical reactions. There's your moods, your behaviors, your thoughts. Each of these pieces interacts with each other. Small changes in one area can really lead to some big changes in the others. And then identifying these pieces is really the key to making that change happen. In terms of kind of breaking some of the connections there. And I saw a few people that kind of wrote earlier about, you know, being true to yourself and kind of every day is your potential reset. Love this stuff. Great pieces from that perspective. Because all of these things matter. Like all of these things matter in terms of thinking about what is it that you want to do? Like what matters to you from that perspective. And so now what I want to do, I think there we go. Is kind of really for questions about how I can learn more. So one of my recommendations actually for people is that this is a book called Mind Over Mood. It's a self-help workbook. It's $17 on Amazon. They can just Google it and find it there. Occasionally the website Goliford Press, which is who sells the book, they sometimes have sales on it. So maybe check there and see if there's a sale on it. But I would say this is definitely one of the best, you know, self-help workbooks that I've kind of read through. And in fact, almost every one of my clients, I tell them, like, just go ahead and buy it. Like you'll use it at various times. And there's worksheets in it. You can print out some worksheets, you can make copies. But I would absolutely say, and if you're wanting to make some changes happen in your life, just pick up this workbook. And for a lot of people, this works great. If you need something more than the workbook, then you definitely kind of reach out from that perspective. But this is something that you can just kind of begin to do to change some of the ways that those connections are kind of working. And then what I want to kind of leave you with is, again, another kind of quote and just really kind of a picture here is that, you know, becoming the best version of yourself will require courage and risk. A ship is safe as long as it sits in the harbor, but that's not what ships are made for. Your life will be comfortable as long as you remain where you are, but change and growth take courage. And again, the really kind of the goal or the kind of meaning behind that is that it does feel comfortable to stay in the current things that are familiar. And in fact, I would say your brain absolutely loves things that feel familiar, even when those familiar things aren't so good for you. A good example of this is kind of like thinking patterns. You know, we often kind of have ways of thinking that aren't necessarily the best for us, but we notice that our brains kind of tell it to ourselves again and again and again. This is why learning how to change that is absolutely key to kind of making a lifelong change there. And then last, I'll just kind of, want to open up for questions. I know I spent a ton of time talking tonight. There's my contact information. Really at the bottom is what I would say is that if you enjoyed this presentation, write a review on Google for me if you could. You don't have to, but just because I know Google's a little weird for sometimes, but definitely feel free to do that. So let me open it up for questions. Chrissy, if you have any or you kind of picked any. Okay.
I'm definitely going to take questions, and I think we're all sad that you're going to stop talking because your voice is just so soothing to listen to. So we will open it up to other people, but it's really just you have this nice calming presence about you that I think I speak for everybody out there. So one of the things I just wanted to comment on, because this goes way back to the beginning, was that I couldn't believe when you asked us to sort of like put our hands together or hug ourselves or something. I personally couldn't believe how comforting it was to sort of hug myself. I just had my hands on my arms, and there was something really comforting about it. So I guess when I'm all alone, I'll just hug myself now. That's
Well,
that was a really great thing to learn tonight.
Nice.
Absolutely. In fact, and what I love about that is that number one, yes, like use physical touch as much as as you need from that perspective. But what's really I think kind of powerful too is this comes a lot from some of the more complementary and alternative kind of research models that we have out there that we know that massage as an intervention is absolutely phenomenal with regards to how it releases just oxytocin into your bloodstream and how you respond to it. And what's really kind of important about physical touch is that we often kind of downplay it. We often kind of think that, oh yeah, like I don't need someone to give me a hug right now. When if you think about, if you had a good friend that you cared about and you really just wanted to kind of let them know that you're there for them, sometimes there aren't even words that can describe what your support needs. And maybe it's just like putting a hand over their hand or honestly just being physically nearby. And that's that same thing. So yes, Christy, you're 100% on point with that. So
fantastic. Good. Well, I definitely want to open it up to the group here because I'm sure that we have plenty of questions. In fact, there are a couple of hands up right now. Let me get to the top here. Jerome, I don't know. Oh, there's a lot of hands up. So let's see where we can go with this. Oh, Jerome, you actually might have to be in charge of the hands tonight.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry to do that to you.
I'm having a physical reaction.
This is the ultimate equalizer is when we all are like stressed with the technology of like, how do I make it work?
All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. Let me just go from the top. I'll allow to talk. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, Jacques Navet, but you are cleared for takeoff if you unmute yourself.
And the little microphone button is in the bottom left corner of your screen.
Yes.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Oh my God, perfect. This is very soothing. You have no idea the help with, me and my wife are doing it at the same time. She's on the same screen, also Jocelyn.
Oh, great.
But it's like very helpful because over here I'm in the city, New York City. And when you go to psychiatrists, they want to tell you that this is wrong with you when you know that's not what's wrong with you. You go in there for telling them what it is, and they want to go somewhere else. So that's why I stopped going to them. And I'm a school bus driver in New York City, and then the COVID happened. I gained almost 85 pounds, a lot of stress and everything else. So me and my wife were doing the surgery together. So your voice what you just said before, those like those little sayings, they're like prayers for us.
Mm.
So it like really soothed that we was holding hands together, doing it together, and it just felt very. I don't even know how to express it.
Oh.
Well, that's
So it's like, do you have like any more outlets of that we can hear you, like any tapes or or recordings so that we could, because I gotta sleep with an apnea machine,
Mhm.
whatever, and it soothes me. So now,
Right.
like hearing a voice, like it's like you just hypnotized us, pretty much.
Well,
Well, I'm glad.
oh, go ahead.
No. I'm glad it was soothing. Like I'm glad it was a good experience for you. I do have some suggestions, but I'll let you respond, Christy. And then I have
I
some
was just going to
suggestions.
say we are recording the session, so at the very least you can play this session over again, and listen to some of the better parts that you really enjoyed. But go ahead if you
Okay.
have some suggestions.
good.
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for that feedback from
Thank you.
that perspective.
Mhm.
And sorry, I'll let you talk, Jerome. Were y'all done?
No, I was just going to try to lower a hand. No, I can't do that. Jack, I almost took you out of the seminar.
All right. Well, Jack, I'll respond to maybe your question, at least of finding some things that could be some soothing things. I will say there's two apps that I like a lot. One of them is Calm. The other one is Headspace. I think they both have like a free tier or free trial tier, but both of them do have some meditations that can kind of be helpful. And from that perspective, I would also say too, on YouTube, you can find some stuff. The challenge on YouTube is it's kind of variable in terms of quality sometimes, but I would say if you're looking for a good kind of soothing, calming, good wind down routine, something that kind of helps you to just kind of let go of the stress of the day, Calm is a really good app that has some good meditation options in there for you.
Cool.
And Insight Timer, love Insight Timer too. Yes, another good one.
All right. Good. Let me bring another person up. Suze? If you're there, remember to do your mute button, please. Sometimes people have to step away for a minute. Suze, if you we'll check back a little bit later. Okay. And I'm still learning whatever worked last time. I've already forgotten to talk about forgetting fast.
No worries. How about this question really quick, Dr. Baugh? Why do we acknowledge or focus more on our failures and overlook or ignore our successes?
I love this question. And this one is 100% on point of like, oh my gosh, why does my brain do that? And I would say, and this is where I can kind of maybe have everybody reflect a little bit. Let me ask you, why do you think your brain might be more concerned with something that's negative and less concerned with something that's positive? Like, what do you think are some thoughts on that? And anybody can kind of respond to that. Safety, yep, that's one piece of it. And I'll kind of add a little bit onto that. It has everything to do with essentially just kind of responding to a danger or to a threat. And so the reason why our brains fixate more on negative types of things is primarily because your brain, again, if you think about what I mentioned earlier about your brain, number one, makes fast decisions, not necessarily accurate decisions. It does that because it's really focusing on things that are going to help you to survive. And the real challenge is that, and there's no real like clear research on this of like, how many positive experiences do I have to have in order to outweigh one negative experience? Because depending on you and maybe some of the symptoms you're experiencing can kind of fluctuate. But what we do know is that it's disproportionately outweighed, that the negative experiences take up more airspace in our mind than positive experiences. And one study that I saw, but it was a couple of years ago, essentially said that you need one negative experience requires at least 7 positive experiences to kind of undo it. But again, that's not necessarily that number, I would say, isn't necessarily super accurate, but it just kind of goes to show you that your brain by default loves to focus on things that are usually more about keeping you safe and free from danger. And so because of that, it's going to focus more on the, the shadow in the corner of your eye and the woods than it is going to be about, the sunshine and anything else that's going to happen to you, if that kind of makes sense.
Great. How are we doing, Jerome?
We're good. How about someone just asked, they're looking for a psychologist in their area.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you find someone? What are you looking for? There's a lot of types. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you know if you have good chemistry, or do you just feel it and all that?
Yes, no, all great questions. And I would say the honest answer, there's a few different ways to find the psychologist in your area. The first way, well, and it depends which route you want to use with regards to kind of services, meaning like paying for services. So if you want to use your insurance company, I would always encourage you to go to your insurance company first and see have them give you a list of who's in your area. The challenge is that usually just refer you to a website and tell you to go type in some names or type in some areas, and then you get a list of like 100 people, and you're like, how do I pick and choose? So I'd say I have a strategy for you when you get to that. But the first thing is just starting out with a list. So there's a couple different ways. You can go to the American Psychological Association has a good psychologist locator, and that's at locator.apa.org. You can also just Google it, just type in APA psychologist locator, and you can find it there too. And that'll tell you anybody who's nearby in your area and what they do and who they are. As to the second question of, how do I figure out who I'm a good fit with or not? A lot of times people do free consultations. I do for new clients, like I do a free 20-minute consultation. So that's often a way that you can kind of get in touch with someone and be like, hey, can I just chat with you about what my problems are? Are you a good fit for me? Do you do this? Do you not do this? The other real strategy, and I would say this is where kind of becoming your own mental health advocate is key, of you absolutely can see more than one provider while you're figuring out who's a good fit for you. And what I mean by that is that you can schedule an intake evaluation, especially if you're using your health insurance benefits, because there's usually no limit on that. You can schedule an intake evaluation with different people. I think you can only do one per day. So maybe you want to check your insurance on that perspective. But you can schedule an intake session with, person number 1 on a Monday, person number 2 on a Wednesday, and person number 3 on a Friday. And it'll take some time, but I would say use those sessions just to be like, hey, like you're trying to really figure out if they're a good fit for you. Because it's really about, if you feel like you can connect with that person, ultimately that's really what matters. It's that you can connect with them and that they have expertise in what you are looking for. Because if it's not a good fit, it's just not a good fit, and then it's just not going to be a good experience for you. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
That's good advice.
All right.
Yes, and social workers too. Yes, you can find. I would say, honestly, almost everybody's on. If you go to Psychology Today, you can see practically any type of mental health provider. So,
got it. Okay, going with Latasha.
Hi, Latasha, you're on. You just have to click your little microphone at the bottom left corner. Latasha, if you want to ask a question of Dr. Bond, just unmute or we'll go to the next person. Maybe that was an accidental hand.
Yeah, we'll move on. Sorry, Latasha, if you're trying to get to us. All right. Candace.
Hi, Candace.
You're on. I'm going to practice. Come on down.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Candace.
Hi, my question is, how do you control yourself from emotional eating when that's basically been your cycle since you can remember? So I noticed that I'm an emotional eater. So like if I'm depressed or sad, instead of talking about my feelings or it's not that I don't have the support to talk about my feelings. I just feel like that with everything that's going on in the world, the last thing that anyone around me wants to hear is my problems or my issues. And so I feel like I don't want to burden anyone talking about what's going on. So instead, I choose the shutdown method, and I choose to kind of um, binge eat until I'm feeling good, which obviously that's not a good thing because I wouldn't be here, going through this discussion. I just want to know, like, is there any different ways that I can, I guess, deal with trying to reach out to someone if I'm having a problem as opposed to emotionally eating?
So great question, Candace, and thank you so much for your bravery, actually, and asking your question, and really in coming tonight too. Um, I would say emotional eating and binge eating are number one fairly common for a lot of people, and I would say, I work a lot with people who are kind of going through varying phases of kind of both binge eating as well as bulimia as well as night eating syndrome, um, and what I would say as it relates to kind of food and kind of emotions and moods is if you think about that five aspects, a picture that we did a little while ago today, um, it's really important to understand that what binge eating gives you is it gives you something that's positive in the moment. It gives you a way to cope with some of the stress that you're going through. And so really what that means is that we want to approach treatment for binge eating from a couple different ways. Number one, we want to give you new tools to manage that stress. And number two, we also want to address maybe what else is behind some of the binge eating, which, to be honest, a lot of my clients who deal with binge eating also deal with hunger. So hunger is probably, I would say, one of the most common, things that triggers an episode of binge eating for a lot of clients. Because usually if you've engaged in binge eating, there's usually some aspect of maybe restricting your food intake for a period of time too, meaning that maybe you go periods of time without eating, or you might kind of skip some meals here or there. And what's really, I think, important is to understand how your biology of how hunger works uh, impacts how you think. And a lot of my work with clients, I always reference the Snickers commercials, which were, I don't even know if they're still on anymore, but and I'm not that I'm a Snickers fan, but I will say their marketing is on point. The idea where you have like the person who's really hangry, and then they eat a Snickers bar, and then all of a sudden they become calm again. I would say that experience is why, and this is where UNJURY, I think, comes in, from a phenomenal perspective, anything that can take the curb off of that hunger, and protein is a good example of that, is absolutely going to change the way you think. Because what we know is that when you are hungry, you are no longer thinking with this frontal cortex part of your brain. And in fact, I would say this is one of the biggest myths that's out there, is that somehow when you're living with binge eating that you need more willpower, or that you need more like self-discipline, or that you need more of these things. Because really what you need to understand is what's happening in your body first. The first thing that's happening is when you're hungry is it's not this part of your brain that's taking over. It's this part of your brain. It's that hind brain. And that's why you can have specific cravings for things like different types of foods or certain flavors of foods. And what's really kind of interesting is that what we know about the brain research is that when you move into these zones of where hunger is literally like starting to take over your body, which means that really your body is saying, hey, you haven't fed me in a while. And your body is like, oh, but it's okay. I can still, I can still focus at work, right? I'm gonna still do something that I need to do. And then your body's saying, hey, I'm still hungry. You haven't fed me yet. And you're like, oh, nope, take your time. I'm still gonna do my thing. Eventually your body's gonna be like, we're not waiting on this. We're not waiting the frontal cortex to kind of acknowledge it. The rest of your body says, nope, we are going to focus in on food. And that's really where it becomes super challenging to stop what is a natural kind of hunger process from then becoming kind of an episode of binge eating. Does that kind of make sense, Candace?
Yes, it actually makes complete sense because my primary care physician, she mentioned to me, because I actually mentioned to her how I don't eat during the morning. If I normally skip breakfast, I normally skip lunch. By the time I'm I feel hungry. It's like maybe 3:45, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, well, no, I can't eat now because if I eat now, then dinner's at 5:30. So, it's too close. So I often just wait it out until dinner. And oftentimes I'm having just the one meal a day. Or if I'm staying up late because I can't fall asleep, this is where the snacking come in. So my doctor actually encouraged me to start eating breakfast, put something on your stomach. But I told her it hurts my stomach when I eat in the morning. But she's like, oh, well, you got to do that,
Hmm.
So my thing is, I mean, I can honestly understand where your point of view, where you're coming from.
Hmm.
Thank you so
Well, and
much.
you're welcome. And the other piece too that, and you mentioned this, and I was reading through some of the comments of it's a combination of a few different things that's kind of happening with binge eating. Number one is that for most people that have been dealing with binge eating, these are patterns that have been there for, if not years, probably decades for most people. And so these patterns show up that really make it's not just a simple thing of like, oh, we'll just eat breakfast and it'll go away. um, because a pattern that's been there for quite a long time just doesn't simply go away when we start eating breakfast, as a good example. But what does show up, and this is why I kind of wanted to reiterate, and we know again this from a lot of the research as it relates to food, your brain lights up for certain types of foods, especially when you're hungry. These are things like high salt foods, high carbohydrate foods, high sugar foods, high fat foods. And what's really kind of interesting about them is that your brain, if they look at kind of MRI activity or fMRI activity, your brain's reactions to these types of foods are along the lines of similar like when you have a craving for things. There's still some debate about whether or not someone can have an addiction to food or if it's just really a really strong psychological habit. I would say the real difference is that there's a specific neurotransmitter that shows up with substance misuse, does not show up with food addiction. So it's really challenging to say that it's addiction per se, but regardless, it doesn't matter. Like there's super strong psychological habits that show up when number one, we've withheld food from our bodies for a certain amount of time. And then number two, your brain senses or your body becomes aware of one of those foods that are, high sugar, high fat, high carbohydrate, or high starch, or one of the ones that I was saying earlier. When your brain becomes aware of these things, it's not this frontal cortex part of your brain. It's not the calm, reasoning, kind of, planning, problem solving part of your brain that takes over. It's not that part. It is the part of your brain that says, I want that food now and I'm going to eat it. And that's really what takes over, which is why it's not about willpower. It's just about working smarter with both your brain and your body, if that makes sense. Great question, Candace.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Candace. I'm sure that helped a lot of people.
All right, so we're going to start running out of time. How about a couple of quick rapid fires, just kind of pace through them. Is there, I'm looking at notes, are there therapists who can help with smoking and drinking? Things like that. Yeah.
Yes,
Is
yes,
there
absolutely.
is there a kind of therapy? Is that a CBT thing? Is it a good approach?
Good question. And I would say there's a few different approaches. What we know, so drinking and smoking are two various aspects of kind of substance misuse. And what we know about both of those kind of pieces is that, especially when we're talking about tobacco misuse, is that number one, it's a super hard habit to kick because the issue is not getting, getting rid of the habit initially. For most people, they can handle the physiological withdrawal from going through tobacco, or nicotine kind of dependence just fine with like gum patches, lozenges, and Chantix. Those actually work fairly well. The issue though is what happens later, which is when you hit some sort of like crazy stressful event in life and you're like, oh my gosh, where's that cigarette? Or what I see a lot of, where's that vape pen? Because a lot of clients that I've seen lately have been, it's usually a vape with a nicotine containing substance in the vape. And, I think what's really important is that, yes, you can use kind of cognitive behavioral therapy for that. You can also use other approaches like motivational interviewing. I would say there is some evidence for hypnosis for tobacco, but I would say really the goal is you just want to work with someone who knows how the human body responds to both substances as well as the habits that we develop as it relates to substances. And so motivational interviewing is a really good one if there's kind of any other type of substance misuse, as well as kind of cognitive behavioral therapy. So
Great, thank you. Well, we're kind of getting to that point. That was a really fast hour and a half. Wow.
Yes, it was.
It was.
I know. We can always keep going with you, Dr. Bond. So we'll definitely, anytime that you've got an extra hour and a half in your life, we'd love to have you back.
I loved it. I was going to come back. I love this. This is fun stuff.
Good.
So,
Oh,
and binge
fantastic.
eating would be a great presentation.
Yes,
so.
yes. I think we talked about that as sort of our next choice, maybe. So we'll add that to the list. But everybody, I know that you're also looking forward to me picking a winner here tonight so that somebody gets a great UNJURY prize. So let me look at who is on the list. Okay, so if the winner, here's how you win. You have to raise your hand if I call your name so that we know you're still out there. All right, so the first person on my list tonight is Jeremy Azur, Jeremy A. If you're out there, and he's there, yay. All right. So the way that you claim your prize, congratulations to the winner, Jeremy. The way you claim your prize is by sending an email to supportgroup@unjury.com. You just have to send us your mailing address so that we can send you your prize. Forgive me, my puppy found a water bottle that she was bouncing around behind me. So anyway, supportgroup@unjury.com. Send us your mailing address and we will send you an UNJURY goodie bag full of stuff for you to try. So congratulations.
Fantastic. Let me just remind you, the research says people who go to support groups lose weight better. People who go to more support groups do even better. So that's why we're here. And please spread the word online or at your other support groups or wherever you go. Please spread the word. We're here to help people.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Dr. Bond.
Yes,
awesome.
Thank you, Dr. Bond. Wonderful.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Now, I think if you take a look at the chat, you're going to see a few comments coming in. Usually when we sign off, I can't even get to the bottom.
They're going pretty fast. They're going pretty fast. Yes.
Yeah. Lots of thank yous, and it was great and educational. You can see it too. I don't even have to read, but thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you for your nice comments, and we're always happy to be here. And the best we have that we can do. Actually, do you have your puppy there? We have a virtual.
She just ran away.
Really? Grab the puppy a second, Christy. We're going to invent a new therapy.
She's next week.
But next week we're going to have virtual pet, Zoom pet. But in the meantime, Dr. Bond, we have invented a new therapy called the group hug via Zoom. And it's a pretty easy maneuver to execute. So here we go with a group hug for everybody. So group hug.
Now we should. Now we actually should hug ourselves too after all that. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Great, everybody.
Right. Thank you, everybody, so much. Great session. Thanks again, Doctor.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
See you next time.
See you soon. Bye.